Taryl here. In today's video, we're going to talk about valve clearance on overhead valve engines, flathead engines, different types of adjustments for valve clearance. Because a grass rat called me last week and he was confused because there was conflicting information on the inner screen about how to set valve clearance on these small engines. So I want to clear all that up. So we're going to talk about how to set valve clearance and the different ways of setting it. Stay tuned. So I picked out a bunch of different cylinder heads from a bunch of different engine manufacturers, and we're going to go over all the differences of the valve clearance, how you adjust it. So here's all the different types of heads and stuff that I found. I know there's a few more that are different, but once you listen to me explain how this works, it should make perfect sense to you. So there's a couple of reasons why you have to have valve clearance and why the clearance is so minute a lot of times. One of the reasons being is if you have too much valve clearance, it's not going to bump the compression release. Because a lot of these small engines have a compression release on the camshaft. And how that works is when the lifter is running over this, see that little nub there? And see how it's sticking up above? When it runs over that, it bumps the valve to release the compression. If you have too much valve clearance, it's just going to ride over that and it's not going to bump the valve. Or you're going to have hard cranking. The engine's going to crank hard. You're going to turn the key and it's going to turn a half a turn and stop. Like you got a dead battery or you got a bad starter. And that's not the case. It's because you may have too much valve clearance. So how a compression release works is once the engine starts, and the camshaft starts spinning, centrifugal force will throw this little weight out of the way. So now we have a flat spot. So it'll quit bumping the valve. And then when the engine stops, the little spring returns it to its position, so it'll bump it. Now watch here on this engine here as I turn it over. Get over here, Mr. Cameraman. Now watch, you'll see the compression release in action. You'll see it just move just a little bit. See how it just moved a little bit? That's the compression release. It just bumped that. So if you had too much clearance, it may not bump it. I've seen that a lot on those single cylinder Honda engines when they get a lot of time on them. It'll be real hard to pull. You can get it started once you get it off the compression stroke, or you may end up breaking the rope when all you got to do is simply pull the valve cover off and get rid of some of that clearance. You got to close it up so it'll start bumping the valve again. So a 14 and a 10, and I'm going to put them like that to give me some leverage so we can crack that loose. We'll put our 5 in there. We want to hold the 14, tighten the 10. See, now that's a little too tight. We'll back off the 10. Tighten the 14 into the 10. Loosen the 10 a little more, tighten the 14 up against it. There we go. Now I'm going to tighten the 10 onto the 14. Oh yeah. Alright, now do the same for the other side with 7. Another reason you need valve clearance, again, has to do with physics. When things get hot, they expand. So if you had no valve clearance in here, and this heats up, you're going to lose that clearance Then you have the potential of it holding the valve open. And when it holds the valve open, you're not going to have any compression. And then when the engine cools down, then it'll start again because now it's cooled down, it's cold, and there's clearance in there again. There's just not enough clearance. So that's why valve clearance is important. Same with the flathead. As the face of the valve wears, it'll wear a groove in it. So now the valve is sitting down further, and now you've lost your clearance in here. So sometimes, again, when engines get hot, my engine gets hot. When it gets hot, when I run it for about 30, 40 minutes, it gets hot and it shuts off, and then I got to wait for it to cool down. Then it'll start up again and run for 30 or 40 minutes. Well, everything's getting hot. Everything is expanding. You're losing your clearance. It's holding the valves open. And then you may go and inspect your valves and then go, oh, I got no clearance. I got my valves both closed, piston at top dead center. I got no clearance in there. There's no clearance because the face of the valve has a groove war in it from dirt and dust over time. Now the valve is sitting down. It's sitting down further because that material on the face of the valve is missing. So now you've lost your clearance. So you got two choices. Pull the valves out, have new faces ground on them. Then you still got to reset grind off the end of the valve stem to get your clearance. Or you could just take the valve out and grind your clearance back in there and relap it in. And just leave the grooved valve in there. Or buy new valves. And then grind off the stem and set your clearance in there. So that's why valve clearance is important on a small engine. Does that make sense, grass rats? Is it all coming full circle? You know what's going on now? You see how things work? You got to think about physics. Hot and cold. You know, when things get cold, they shrink up. Like when you jump in a swimming pool, you know what happens? Everything shrinks up. And then when things get warm, everything relaxes. So, the first thing is, they always tell you to bring the piston to top dead center with both valves closed. Well, sometimes that's difficult when the head's on an overhead valve engine like this. Because you're pulling it over and you're trying to figure out, where's top dead center? So the way I do it is you pull the engine over until one of the valves is fully open. It's opened all the way. And when this valve is opened all the way, there is no tension or anything on the valve across from it. And then you could set it, because that's the easiest way to do it. That's how they did it on old cars. Old cars that had solid lifters where you had valve adjustment, that's how you had to do it, because you had multiple cylinders on there. And it was hard to tell when it was at top dead center, both valves closed. So you would just crank the motor over till one of the valves was open on the cylinder you're working on, and you would just set the one across from it. Now you can do the top dead center, both valves closed, but you got to take the spark plug out, and then you got to have something to stick in the spark plug hole so you know where it's at. So now you got to pull the plug. You got to bring it to top dead center. That's a lot of messing around. For me, it's a lot easier. Turn the motor over. Have the one valve fully open. And that way there's no tension on the other side. Now I'm going to explain why that works. Because here's a cam. Here's a camshaft with lobes on it. So, when you've got that valve right here, this is going to push that valve all the way open, the tippy top of that lobe, directly across from it Where the other valve is, there's nothing on there for this, for right here. See, there's nothing there. So that way, you'll know you'll get the right clearance. Here's a flathead engine where I've removed the head. So look, right here, you got this overlap here that you got to be concerned about. See, this is at top dead center, but we've got overlap where both valves are open. And they're just starting to open and starting to close. So you may experience that same issue while you're trying to do it this way, where you're trying to figure out which is open, which is closed, and you don't want to get that overlap like this. It's a 4-cycle engine, just like that one, works the same way. This overhead valve, this is an L head or a flathead. But when you set valves on one of these flatheads, you're going to have to pull the head off. See, there's top dead center, both valves closed. Or what if you got it in this position? Oh, yeah, it's top dead center. You stick something down the spark plug hole and you go, oh yeah, that's top dead center. Oh, I got no valve clearance in here. Because here's your valve clearance. Right here. Right in between. And in order to set these valves, let's bring this to top dead center, both valves closed. See, now our clearance is in here and in here. So in order to set these valves, you have to physically take the valve out and grind off the bottom of the stem of the valve to achieve the proper clearance that the engine calls for. Now some Crawlers and some Crawler K-Series, the old ones, and some Onins, they have an adjusting screw on the end of the tappet or the lifter. And then you just take 2 wrenches and you can achieve your clearance by turning the nut. But on this particular, this is a Takumish L head, you have to grind off the bottom of the valve to get that clearance in there. I know what you're saying, grass rats. Well, what's the valve clearance supposed to be? What's the valve clearance? What's the valve clearance? Calm down, grass rat. You're going to have to look up the valve clearance for your specific engine because they're all different. They're mostly 4,000s, but some have a higher or a larger valve clearance on the exhaust side. And the reason they do that is because it's the exhaust side, and the exhaust gets hotter than the intake side. And if you know anything about physics, when things get hot, they expand. When they're cold, they contract. So if you've got more clearance on your exhaust side, or you set them both to the same, and the engine gets hot and things expand, then you're going to lose some of that clearance. And then you know what happens then? Then it kind of holds the valve open. So you need to look up the specifications for your valve clearances for your specific engine. Some engines, some small engines, have hydraulic lifters. So there's no clearance at all. There's no valve clearance. And how do you know? Well, I'll tell you how. Crawler commands, whether it's a single or an overhead valve twin, have hydraulic lifters. Crawler command. Not the Courage, the command. Here's a command. Single cylinder. Overhead valve. I can tell by the valve cover on it. There's no adjustment here. There's no adjusting. You just tighten the rocker arm down. Here's a command twin cylinder head. Same thing. There's no adjustment on there. There's nowhere to adjust it. So you're not going to tighten and loosen the screw and try to put a feeler gauge in there to adjust these. These are hydraulic lifters, which is in most cars today. Just about every car today has hydraulic lift. Oh, excuse me. That's that taco coming up from lunchtime. Excuse me, grass rats.
Wow!
Hydraulic lifters. How to identify if you have adjustable lifters? Here, right here. See? This is a jam nut with the set screw in the middle. These are adjustable. So you can set the clearance, the valve clearance. This is adjustable. Right here, same thing. This is off of Brakes and Scrap 'em, single cylinder overhead valve engine. There's a set screw in there on the nut. That's adjustable. Here's another Brakes and Scrap 'em. This is a Vanguard. Brakes and Scrap 'em Vanguard. Here's your adjustment right here on the end. It's not in the center like this one. It's on the very end of the push rod. Here's where the push rod goes. Okay, now we're going to set the valves. 4,000s is what I set them at. Turn the motor over till you got one of the valves open. Doesn't matter which one. You're just going to do the one across from it. So this is open. T40 Torx is what fits in here in a 1/2-inch wrench or 13 millimeter. And then turn in the T40 part till the feeler's snug, and then hold it, and then tighten that jam nut. There, that's good. Slides in there good. Not real tight, not real loose. I got lucky on that one. Then turn it over. Now, this valve will be open. And then you just do the same on this side. Oh, I'm sorry. This is an Intec. This is a Vanguard. Same thing. Right on the end of the rocker arm. Those threads in there are to hold the valve cover on. That's why there's threads in that nut. But here's your adjustment for your clearance, for your valve clearance, right here on the end of the push rod. This is a Chinese engine. See, it's got an adjustment on here. This is how you do your adjustment. Now this is a kind of sucky. I like this the best. This is the easiest to set your valve clearance. And I'll show you why. See this? See how it's moving? See how that moves? This is on what's called an eccentric. Like me, I'm kind of eccentric. So you loosen this nut and you turn this, and then when you achieve your proper clearance, you just tighten that nut down. Now you got to make sure these are loose. Keep these loose. So we'll turn the motor over until we open one of the valves. It don't matter which one, till it's fully open. 4 to 6 thousandths. So when you turn this, see? See when you turn this? See how it moves it? It's pretty slick, huh? Makes it easy. So there's we turned it, there's our 4 thousandths. And then you just hold it there and then tighten the nut underneath. Pretty simple. Oh. Look at that. One-time deal. 4 thousandths. Spin it over till the other valve's fully open. Same thing. See, you'll see it turn. That's a pretty slick idea. I like that. That makes it easy. You ain't sitting there with that lock nut like on other ones, messing with that lock nut, and then you get it tightened down, and then it moved a little bit, and then you're loosening it back up. This type, all these other type, a lot of times when you move that one screw and you tighten the other one, and then you go to check it, you know, sometimes it's too tight, and then you got to back it off a little bit and then tighten it again. So there's a lot of back and forth just trying to get it right with this method, with the jam nut method, with the set screw, or even this method. This is kind of like the Hondas use. This is like a knockoff, this Chinese snowblower engine. But I like this one the best with the eccentric. These are real simple to do. Just loosen that nut on the side. You can see how it's moving back and forth. And that's how you achieve your valve clearance. Very simple, right, grass rats? Once it's explained to you and you understand how it works, then everything makes perfect sense, right? Turn it till the valve's fully open, and then you got clearance on the other side. Been doing it this way for years. Never had a problem. It's not like I've been doing it this way and then I got all these engines coming back because the valves are out of adjustment. No. Been doing it for years. That's how it works. There's your lobe. Lobe, there's your high spot. When you're at your high spot, this is at the low spot. Then you don't have to worry about that overlap, like I showed you here. See? They're both starting to open and close, and it's at top dead center. There you have it, grass rats. So, check out our web store. We got all kinds of new stuff now. Woo! New stuff! Like this gently used work shirt. Check this out. Got that on there. Got a patch on there. Comes with a patch. Check out our shirts. You need to get one. You know where this would look good? On your scrawny little body. This would look good on you. We got them in all sizes. Check it out. Different styles, different types. You have to go there and look. Go to the website. Check it out. There's something there you want or need. We got all kinds of stuff. Other than just shirts and hats and t-shirts. We got all kinds of different products. There's something there you might want. Follow me while you're trying to set your valves. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Remember I said that time's running out on TikTok? And I said, no, it's not running out. It's not running. TikTok's not going anywhere. Tick-tock on the clock. Tick-tock. And as always, there's your dinner. Woo! Hope this has cleared up confusion about setting valves. Do it my way. Or hit the highway. And there's your dinner.